To be a bumpy nut.
I don't have to tell you things are bad. Everybody knows things are bad. It's a depression. Everybody's out of work or scared of losing their job. The dollar buys a nickel's worth. Banks are going bust. Shopkeepers keep a gun under the counter. Punks are running wild in the street, and there's nobody anywhere who seems to know what to do, and there's no end to it. We know the air is unfit to breathe, and our food is unfit to eat. We sit watching our TVs while some local newscaster tells us that today we had 15 homicides and 63 violent crimes, as if that's the way it's supposed to be. We know things are bad, worse than bad. They're crazy. It's like everything everywhere is going crazy, so we don't go out anymore. We sit in the house, and slowly the world we're living in is getting smaller, and all we say is, please, at least leave us alone in our living rooms. Let me have my toaster and my TV and my steel-belted radios, and I won't say anything. Just leave us alone. Well, I'm not going to leave you alone. I want you to get mad.
Wait a minute. You ain't heard nothing yet. Wait a minute, I tell you. You ain't heard nothing.
So, I want you to get up now. I want all of you to get up out of your chairs. I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore.
I'm mad as hell, I'm not going to take it anymore.
I'm mad as hell! I'm not gonna take it anymore!
I'm not going to take it anymore.
I'm not
going to take it anymore.
Welcome to another exciting David Pollack show. What a week it's been since we last spoke. We had Super Tuesday. Trump won bigly, except for one place. We'll talk about that in a minute. I'm not real upset about it. Nikki Haley is out. Oh my gosh, Nikki Haley is out. We'll talk about that here in a second. We had a State of the Union. I call it the State of Disunion on Thursday. We've got to talk about that a little bit. And, I mean, we've had a continuing resolution pass. I'll talk about that here in a second, too. I'll tell you, it's never a dull week around here. And if you've been watching us over at the DC Patriot, DC After Dark, we've been covering this, but I'm bringing it to you here. Man, so much has been going on, and I'm going to try to cover as much as I can for you. Again, it's going to be a quick show because later coming up in the show, I have Gabrielle Clark. And she is the founder of Affirming Reality Connected, an organization she started to help parents where their kids might be indoctrinated with gender-affirming persuasion in school. Interesting story there. So we'll hear from her here in just a few minutes right after our break. But, you know, without further ado, let's just get right into it because after we last spoke last week, because I think we previewed Super Tuesday Monday. Super Tuesday happened. And, of course, as predicted, Trump swept Super Tuesday. The only state he didn't win was Vermont. Now, Vermont is an open primary state. It's actually more than that. You don't pick a political affiliation in Vermont. So basically anybody can vote in Vermont. I don't know what the actual breakdowns were, how many Democrats voted versus Republicans. Nikki Haley beat Trump by about 5 points there in Vermont. Look, he won every other state. It didn't matter. I thought they would use Vermont as a reason to keep Haley in this, but thankfully, she didn't have any events scheduled. But the next day, sure enough, she's out. And she didn't endorse Trump. She stopped short. But let's listen to what she has to say. Check it out.
I am filled with the gratitude for the outpouring of support we've received from all across our great country. But the time has now come to suspend my campaign. I said I wanted Americans to have their voices heard. I have done that. I have no regrets. And although I will no longer be a candidate, I will not stop using my voice for the things I believe in. In all likelihood, Donald Trump will be the Republican nominee when our party convention meets in July. I congratulate him and wish him well. I wish anyone well who would be America's president. Our country is too precious to let our differences divide us.
Yeah, so there you go. Haley's gone. I am so happy that we don't have to waste any more money keeping Nikki Haley in this race. I don't have to listen to her anymore, make excuses on how losing is winning and coming in second is almost as good as coming in first and the participation trophy nonsense. And I don't need to see our party any more divided than it's been. Trump was always going to be the nominee. There really is no reason for any of this opposition. But hey, look, let democracy do its thing. Let people choose. But now Trump is the lone survivor. Haley never got to the 13th fella. And now Trump is the only nominee. He will secure the nomination, I believe it's March 19th, when Florida, Oklahoma, Arizona, Ohio, and a bunch of big states have their primaries. And that'll put Trump over the top of the 1,215, I believe, delegates that he needs to actually secure the nomination. He's over 1,000 at this point. So he's very, very, very close. And then as predicted, Ronna McDaniel, she called it quits. And now we have a new chair and vice chair at the RNC, Michael Wyatt, I believe, and Laura Trump is vice chair. And so I'm hopeful that new group of people at the RNC, with all the opposition out of the way, we can really start fundraising and really start putting Trump ahead at the top here, because polling suggests that Biden is not going to be difficult to beat. He's polling terribly low. And, people are seeing it. That if you didn't vote for Trump last time around because you wanted to try something new, you didn't like his mean tweets, maybe you're still recovering from COVID. I think at this point, with all the foreign wars, with the inflation and the gas prices, the price of groceries, the bare shelves, the division in the country, the illegal aliens pouring across the border, killing Americans, the violence in our schools and in our communities. I mean, I'm sure you've seen that video. I'm not going to get to cover it today, but in Hazelwood, where that poor girl had her head beaten into the concrete in the hospital now in critical condition. The cities are falling apart. Crime is out of control. People are seeing this now. So if you didn't vote for Trump last time, for whatever reason, I'm pretty sure you're going to vote for Trump this time around. So I don't think it's going to be the same. Plus, RFK Jr.'s in there. That is definitely going to take some of the never Trump vote away from Biden. If you're not going to vote for Trump, you're certainly not going to vote for Biden. So I think Trump wins easily. The polling suggests it's going to happen. And now with Haley out of the way, we can really turn around and focus on the general. But then you look at Joe Biden knowing this, and he used the State of the Union as almost like a campaign speech. I've covered this in a short video. It's over at the DC Patriot. You can also find it on my Twitter feed at The Pollock Show. Basically, he called Trump a threat to democracy again, those common lines, pretended the economy was good. Marjorie Taylor Greene somehow got Biden to acknowledge Laken Riley. And, in typical Biden fashion, Biden goes, Lincoln Riley, which is, I think, the Oklahoma Sooners football coach.
Lincoln Riley, an innocent young woman who was killed by an illegal. That's right. But how many of thousands of people being killed by illegals?
I mean, there was just some highlights and things, and it was pretty crazy. It wasn't much of a State of the Union. Of course, everybody who wanted Biden to be for this to be the thing that proves he can still be president, they were saying, "Oh, it's the best speech in the world. This was exactly what Joe Biden needed to prove to everybody that he still has it." And of course, that's what they said.
Look, he draws energy from a room like that. He sort of gained some speed over the course of the evening, gave a long speech, gave it well, and stayed longer probably than anybody expected him to. Look, the bar, as we know last night, was to say to Americans, I can do this. I've got the vigor, I've got the precision. And look, there are flubs along the way. That's inevitable. But this is about giving. There were a lot of Americans who weren't sure what they were going to see last night. And I think a lot of people came out of there feeling reassured.
But at the end of the day, he doesn't look any sharper than he's looked lately. He's still clearly declining. He just seemed yelled a lot. He was very divisive. It just, look, it's a sad state of affairs. The world is watching, and November can't come soon enough. I mean, meanwhile, Trump is in rallies, packed houses. He was in Rome, Georgia, over the weekend.
Hello, Georgia. I'm thrilled to be back in Rome. We did very well in Rome. Very well with thousands of proud, hardworking American patriots. You are amazing. You built this country. You built this country. This has been a tremendous week for our movement. We won big on Super Tuesday. They call it Super Tuesday for a reason. We won big. And now we're just days away from officially clinching the Republican nomination for President of the United States of America. I want to thank the millions of incredible supporters whose hard work and devotion have led us to this incredible moment in history. You know, this is a movement the likes of which this country has never seen before.
Packed house, lines of people waiting hours and hours and hours to see Trump speak. He is more electric, more on fire, more energetic, more popular than ever before, while Biden is just trying to control the narrative, you know, try to make it seem as if the economy is good. We know it's not. Trying to make it seem like the world's not falling apart. We know it is. Trying to make it seem like he's going to do something about the border. We know he's not going to. And of course, the Republicans, Speaker Johnson, passed another CR, giving them more time to give Democrats and establishment Republicans ways to keep us from being able to secure the border.
We only control 1/2 of 1/3 of the federal government. So we have to be realistic about what we're able to achieve. But in spite of that, we have an appropriations package that is going to cut non-defense, non-VA discretionary spending. And it is going to increase defense spending at this very important and delicate time around the globe. Those are priorities that we have advanced. And we also advanced, as you've seen the summary, cuts to some of the agencies that we believe are really overreaching.
Biden's out there, even at the State of the Union, touting the plan from the Senate that gives $65 billion to Ukraine and very little to the border. We have a standalone border bill, H.R. 2, that's sitting in the Senate. We are losing leverage with each CR, with each funding. We are losing leverage to close the border. So personally, I'm not happy to see that CR. I'm not happy to see the leverage loss. A lot of people are annoyed about it. I mean, anyway. Like I said, November can't come soon enough. Listen, I want to share a lot more with you. I just don't have time because I have a guest coming on, and I really want to be able to spend some time with her. We're limited on the radio. So let me take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to hear from Gabrielle Clark, and she has some really interesting things to share with you tonight. So don't go anywhere. David Pollack Show. We'll be right back.
Hey friends, David Pollack here. If you're craving the best soft serve ice cream around, Topper's Creamery's got you covered. Serving the Apopka community for over a decade, Topper's is known for the finest old-fashioned custard-style soft-serve ice cream in a variety of flavors, from their French vanilla bean to exciting specials like German chocolate cake. But the experience doesn't end there. Be sure to grab a fresh baked waffle cone or a sundae topped with my favorite, the fresh baked brownies. They even offer pup cups for your four-legged friends. So hurry in to Topper's Creamery in Apopka, South 512 Hunt Club Road. Make sure to tell them David sent you.
With today's economic environment, it's never been more important to secure your hard-earned wealth for you and your family's future. FinSec Life works to offer industry-leading customer service to help successful individuals and businesses protect their wealth. Whether it's a business succession plan, estate liquidity, or a variety of life and long-term care policies, FinSec Life can help deliver peace of mind, knowing that if something happens, you or your company is taken care of. Visit finseclife.com. That's FINSEC life.com. Securities offered through Valmark Security Inc., member FINRA and SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through Valmark Advisors Inc., an SEC-registered investment advisor. FinSec Life is a separate entity from Valmark Securities Inc. and Valmark Advisors Inc.
Hello, Patriots, listen up. It's time to wake up and smell the freedom. Beard Vet Coffee is here to fuel your American spirit. This isn't just coffee. It's a battle cry in a cup, a declaration of love for the land of the free and the home of the brave. Crafted by the hands of those who've walked the walk, talked the talk, and, grown the damn beard. Vet-founded, vet-focused, and beard-operated. This is coffee with a mission, a purpose, and a testament to the unyielding American spirit. It's a tribute to the tireless resolve that courses through the veins of our great nation. This is the taste of victory, the flavor of freedom, the coffee that stands as firm as our belief in America's destiny to lead and never to kneel. Beard Vet Coffee is more than a brand. It's a legacy steeped in the principles that make America great. It's for those who stand with pride under the stars and stripes, who uphold the values that light the torch of liberty for the world to see. So, are you ready to supercharge your day the American way? Beard Vet coffee is not just a choice. It's a declaration of independence from mediocre mornings. Bold, brave, unbound. Brewed for the American patriot. Beard Vet coffee. Make your mornings great again.
Business owners, are you sick of dealing with those big-name telecommunications companies that leave you frustrated with terrible customer service and then lock you into long-term contracts? That's why I want to introduce you to my friends over at Public Telephone Company. They are an industry-leading VoIP provider offering all-in-one business communication solutions that are completely contract-free with competitive pricing. But perhaps the best part, they're all about supporting their customers with US-based customer service, and they're always willing to go the extra mile. Don't let your phone company drive you mad. Call Public Telephone Company today at 877-314-4080 or visit them at publictelephonecompany.com. That's publictelephonecompany.com.
Welcome back to the David Pollock Show. As promised, I'm honored to be joined by Gabrielle Clark. She is the founder of Affirming Reality Connected. As you can see her website there and her title, affirmingreality.com. She's an advocate against CRT and SEL, and we're going to talk about all that here in a minute. Gabrielle, welcome to the David Pollock Show.
Thank you so much for having me. This is wonderful.
It's so much fun to have you here. Now, we talk in Twitter Spaces, and I tell my audience all the time about Twitter Spaces. And I'm like, what are Twitter? X Spaces, I guess they're called now. I'll always call it Twitter. Yeah. Just like, what is it, Band-Aids? Even if they're not actual Band-Aid brand Band-Aids, we call them Band-Aids, but they're adhesive strips or whatever, right. or tissues. Some people call them Kleenex.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And they're just tissues, but Kleenex is the brand. Twitter will always be, X will always be Twitter. I'm sorry, Elon. I'll call it Twitter X. I'll put X in it because I know you like X, but I'm trying. I struggle. I still call them tweets, not posts. Anyhow.
Right.
When we're talking on Twitter Spaces, I try to tell people about them because this is a cool thing where it's like a giant chat room, essentially. Everybody gets together. We talk about whatever. You find very interesting people like yourself, and we all get to have those really good conversations. And what's cool about Twitter Spaces versus, and this is just a typical David Pollock Show tangent, but hey, this is what my viewers like. You know, when you turn on Fox News or MSNBC, MSDNC, CNN, or any of the other loser mainstream news networks, you get to hear from the people they deem credible, they deem worthy of having to have a discussion with. Versus when we're in the Twitterverse, when we're in these Twitter Spaces, we get to meet cool people who are actually doing the work, who are real people, and they're not these curated talking heads on contracts with the networks telling us exactly what the approved talking points are. So that's why I love engaging with people on X Spaces, and I love talking to people like you. Some of the most interesting guests I've had on this show are people that I've met in the Twitterverse, you being one of them. So welcome, after that tangent, to the show. And I'm hoping you can tell my viewers a little bit about Affirming Reality Connected, how that came about, how we all got started here.
Well, my daughter was socially transitioned to believing that she was a boy. And so I created the program, the methodology to help her successfully desist from social transition. And now I help other parents through a coaching program at affirmingreality.com. But while I was helping other parents, I realized that there were so much more to the effects of gender ideology besides the social transitioning. And so I wanted to create a community of people that they could come to us, and we would be able to help them with some of the other issues that they have going on with gender ideology. And we decided to call it Affirming Reality Connected, based on the methodology of affirming reality.
Now, could you talk a little bit about how did they convince your daughter that she was trans? How did all that come about?
Well, it's not ever any one thing, I can tell you that. You know, it's usually the trifecta of an addiction to your devices, peer pressure, and the affirmation from an authority figure, be it a family member or an educator. A lot of this has come through the education system. A lot of it has become more pervasive because of the education system. There was a social emotional learning counselor hired at my daughter's school, and next thing you know, my daughter was identifying as trans. Um, a few months went by, and I realized that something was not right with my daughter. And when the summer came, we went to a remote area of Texas where there was no connectivity, there was no internet. So she couldn't interact with her friends, she couldn't get on her devices, and she wasn't in school. And she went back to her usual self. She went back to the, sweet, bright, happy child that I had known before. And that was when I realized there's something wrong with my daughter. Um, once we left Texas and we went back to Las Vegas, the behaviors returned. Some of them because she was able to get back in contact with her friends and get back on the internet. But it wasn't until she went back to school that the dangerous maladaptive coping mechanisms returned. The cutting and scratching and biting and delusions and stuff like that. That didn't happen until she started back to school. And that was when I realized it's her school. It's the school.
So what happened? So I guess between the social media and the school environment, there was like I guess grooming behaviors of some sort, or how did you realize that they were, I guess, convincing her about a gender issue? Like, how did you realize that?
Well, children are highly suggestible. So you don't necessarily have to convince them. And the way this works, the way the indoctrination works is it's in the praxis. So everything is surrounded by this. If you're not kind or if you're not empathetic to to any of these extremely controversial ideas, then you're a bigot or you haven't evolved as a human. And some of it is just reinforcement, positive reinforcement. If you are trans, you get your cookie. If you identify as something other than straight, then you get your little cupcake. That's some of these teachers have been giving out prizes for coming out. So what child wouldn't want a cupcake, and would come out to do it? Uh, if your child is a tomboy, or if they're a little more, if they're a girl, and if they're a little more, traditional, have a little bit more femininity as a boy, then they obviously must be trans in these educators' eyes. And so the convincing is not as difficult as you would think. A lot of kids want to please their teachers. They want to impress their teachers. They want to get whatever prize that they're going to get for claiming that they're different. And this is how it's spread out through schools so widely.
So, and I understand what you're saying because they're a combination of social media, technology, peer pressure, bullying, or however they want to define it. There does seem to be more social engineering in school, more so than education these days. I mean, I've noticed it as well. It's more, and I was talking to somebody about this the other day. From kindergarten, you're taught very early to stand in a line and put your finger over your mouth and walk in a straight line. And then if you're really good, you get rewarded by being the line leader,
Right.
or number two is good, you get to be the door holder,
Right.
or maybe the big prize, the bathroom checker, the person who makes sure no kids are left behind in the bathroom.
Right.
But the idea is the same. You're taught conformity from kindergarten on. And if you're acting up in class, if you're not being challenged, you have ADD, you need medication. If
Right.
you are having, certain issues with a student in class, there's, oh, it's because of this, it's because of that. And it's constantly redefining what the norms are for that setting of, sort of communal thinking. And they use a group mentality to harass and bully kids through social media, Snapchat, TikTok, all the apps that they use, plus in school, shunning them to their own tables at lunch to enforce this behavior. And these kids don't even understand why they feel that way. They just know they're supposed to use the collective to snuff out individuality. And so going back to your point, you're noticing that with your daughter, right?
Well, I mean, yes and no. I mean, so the bullying aspect doesn't happen unless you go against the narrative.
Right.
So what happens before that is the love bombing and the manipulation and the gaslighting and coercion. Most people they believe that equals love and that equals acceptance. So there are a lot of people who cave to that. But the bullying doesn't start until you go against the narrative. And I would say that the bullying campaigns were the test subject for these kinds of behaviors in school. So you're not allowed to bully. And so they experimented on us to see how well we would be receptive to a collective idea if the idea was good. And so we all agreed that bullying shouldn't be a thing, right? We should not be okay with bullying. We should all disavow bullies and disavow bullying. But when the narrative changed and bullying now became something altogether different. So instead of the traditional "we're going to beat you up" bullying, it was we're going to accept you into our community whether you like it or not. And you're going to be a part of our community whether you like it or not because we love you. So it turned into this whole other thing. And the Be Kind movement that was supposed to be an inclusive and not judging people and that sort of thing turned into something wholly different. And I think that that's true with a lot of things. And it's not just a left-right issue. Let me please tell you, it happens on the right as well. There are lawsuits going on all over the country by right-leaning organizations and by right-leaning state authorities against parents who are not okay with this. And they have used and activated CPS and other government agencies against anybody who does not go along with the narrative. It doesn't matter however your identities intersect. Nobody is safe from it. Not on the left, not on the right.
That's why I wanted to talk a little bit more about CRT and SEL. So let's start with CRT. Because now CRT, and what I love about where we've moved to and what I love about the free press, independent media, you're starting to see diverse families go to these school board meetings where there's like 9 white liberal ladies telling them that, explaining to them what racism is and saying, you need this so you can't be discriminated against. And then you have black families and Hispanic families going, excuse me, I don't like this CRT stuff. This is not what we teach our children. No, you have to accept CRT. So that has been something that's very interesting that came out of it. And you notice they're pivoting away from CRT now. And that's what we're going to talk about SEL then in a second. But what's your experience with CRT? And then how did you get involved with that?
So I filed the first federal lawsuit against CRT indoctrination in America. My son was being discriminated against at his school, and he was being asked to list his identities, his race, religion, sexual orientation, that sort of thing, and then attach the signifier of privileged or oppressed to those identities. And because I'm half black and half white, and my first husband was black and my second husband was white. And so I have some of my children are black and some of my children are white. And this child happened to be a white male. And because he's a white male and all of the other ways that his identities intersect, he was just privileged down the line. But that didn't make sense because we were homeless, living in a motel, and he was sleeping on a mat on the floor of a dirty motel in Las Vegas. My late husband, his father, had died when he was only 1 year old. He didn't have a single memory. There's nothing privileged about that life. I had spent years in a wheelchair, and he was having to, pack me up and down the stairs of this motel on his back because I couldn't walk up and down the stairs. Me at 300 pounds, no less. There's nothing privileged about that life, this 16-year-old child having to do those things. And so to tell a young man that he is somehow privileged when the reality of his life is anything but is cruel. And I wasn't we weren't going to stand for it as a family. We asked that he be removed from that class and his record be expunged, but they refused to do that. So we had to get tough, and we filed the first federal lawsuit against woke indoctrination in December of 2020.
And I love that you did that and you stood up to it because you fought the narrative, but you also protected your son. And that is the most offensive thing about CRT is they go and they sit your kid down, not knowing what their race, their religion, anything. You really don't know when you look at somebody.
Not in America. You certainly don't.
At least, right? and then they tell them, hey, not knowing who you are, I'm going to make an assumption based on your race or whatever. And you're supposed to look at that person next to you and you're supposed to hate them because they have all these advantages you don't have. And we're going to teach you how to hate. It's the craziest thing because for so long, we were taught not to hate. And as a matter of fact, when going back to the first conversation in the LGBTQ, trans stuff, you're taught you can't hate. But then with CRT, you're supposed to hate people who are in the majority, the supposed white, majority of the country. And it's so offensive to teach kids. But why? Like, you have to look, why do they want to make people feel that way? What do you think? What is the purpose? What is the function of CRT in your opinion?
Well, everything I know about CRT doesn't necessarily teach people to hate, but it certainly teaches division, which leads to hate. There is definitely a linear path to it. I do think CRT is necessary in its age appropriate setting, which is in law school. Like these are complex concepts, and they certainly should be addressed. But even on its face, I don't necessarily subscribe to a lot of what is being taught through CRT because I believe in individual choice, and I believe in creating your own path, regardless of what your origins are. But I think this is also a product of overeducated erudition, statistics and graphs and charts and whatnot, trying to paint a picture that is not necessarily how real life works. A lot of people with more degrees than a thermometer trying to analyze real life, and they're getting it wrong a lot of the times, and they're not taking into account the human spirit, the American spirit. And so, with that, I say that, I don't like having CRT in schools because our children are not, um, they're not, um, they're not advanced enough to understand that nuance. They're not, in the way that it's being taught in praxis is certainly divisive, because I mean we've had all kinds of crazy stuff going on in the name of diversity. People professing their white privilege and taking privilege walks for children. In North Carolina, at one point, there was a bunch, like $7 million being awarded or supposed to be put set aside for the training for I think it was preschool special ed teachers to understand how to dissect whiteness or some such nonsense, or dissect, get into this diversity and stuff. And I'm thinking, so they're gonna teach the preschool teachers that the blind kid is racist. Is that what I mean, like you know what I'm saying? This is a special education class, for preschoolers. Why in the world would race or religion or sexual orientation or any of that stuff have anything to, they play in blocks. They're playing, they're playing songs with little, sticks and stuff. I mean, this is insanity. We shouldn't continue to give this nonsense any oxygen. But I don't think it has any place in public education at all.
Well, you're exactly right, and but that's the difference. These people have their all white country clubs in their all white neighborhoods, and they go to school and they read about what they should do for these people. These poor people that are just so discriminated against that they've never met. And it's the funniest thing. You go to some of these areas, they think anybody who speaks Spanish is Mexican. They think anybody who speaks Spanish eats chips and salsa. I'm telling you, I've experienced coming from South Florida. I've lived in other parts of the country, and I go there, and I lived in Miami. I went to law school in Miami. A lot of my friends were Cuban, but I have friends from all over the Caribbean, whether it be Haiti, the Dominican Republic, or Puerto Rico, and never confuse a Puerto Rican with a Cuban. I'm just warning you right now, don't do it. But and then you have people from all over South America. And again, whether you're Venezuelan or Colombian or Argentinian, don't confuse those people either. So what I'm telling you is, when you live in a diverse place where everybody's different, and I knew Cubans that had white skin, I knew Cubans that had dark skin, I knew people from Venezuela with light skin or dark skin. People look different everywhere, but you can be from a different place. You can have different heritages. I understand that coming from Florida, but you go out to these areas that we discussed where they've never actually seen diversity, and they read about them. They make these racist assumptions, and you see it with Joe Biden all the time. You see the way he tries to interact with black people, and making assumptions about what they would like and how to appear as if he can relate to them. But Hillary Clinton did it too. Oh, I carry a bottle of hot sauce around with me. I'm like, do you guys realize that as desperately as you try to be as if you understand diversity, you're coming off like somebody who's never met anybody but white people. And they can't even sell it anymore. It's so obvious. And I'm going to give you another example, and I want to ask you about SEL because I know we're going long, but I'm having such a great conversation with you, and it's my show. I can talk as long as I want. But I was in a meeting once, and they have in their bylaws, it was in a public setting, and it had in their bylaws that there was certain economic and racial and religious diversity quotas that they wanted to see. Look, I'm fine with all that. You want a diverse board that makes up every aspect of the community. It makes sense. You don't want one opinion. That's good. Yes. But how do you achieve those? Look, people have to participate. And if there aren't people from these subgroups that want to participate, well, you go with what you got. But we go to this meeting, and a white person who's leading the meeting looks around the room and goes, "Oh, we're not gonna be able to hold this meeting today." And we're like, "Why?" And she's like, "Well, we don't have, quote unquote, we don't have enough minorities." And everyone looks around the room and said, because nobody uses that language, right? And we're looking around like, "What do you mean?" And there was a rule that you had to have a minority of this group, and not a racial minority, by the way. I'm trying to be very vague because I don't want to, bring attention to this. But there was one group of people that had to be in the minority and one group that had to be in majority. And when I say that, I don't mean racial, or I mean there was professionals and then there was people from the community. The professionals had to be in the minority and the people from the community had to be in the majority in order to have a meeting because they wanted more input from the community than from the professionals, right?
There wasn't enough more people for them.
No, listen. So everybody thought when she said that, everybody thought that she meant there wasn't enough
Black people.
no, there wasn't enough community versus professionals. So everyone's like, oh, no, we're good. We have the ratios. And she goes, no, let me clarify. We don't have enough black people.
Right.
Like,
that's what she really
goes,
meant.
we don't have enough racial diversity. And I go, wait a second. I literally stopped him. I go, and look, and then at this point, everyone starts doing this. And starts trying to, and this is, by the way, there's Hispanics in this room. There's black people in this room. There's people who could be white or black or Hispanic or mixed. I mean, nobody looks just like white. You know, it wasn't just a bunch of blonde hair, blue-eyed white people.
If they don't come, what are you supposed to do? Like, that's so insane. Like, if they're not coming to that stuff, then what are you supposed to do? Or if there's not, if that doesn't make up, a big enough portion of your community, then what? I mean, and not only that, but I mean, because that's insulting. And
well,
for
hold
me,
on, I haven't even got to the best part yet. You don't get insulted yet. It gets better. This is just the beginning of the story. So everybody starts looking around like, okay, do we have enough reps? Like trying to figure it out if we can hold this meeting, right? And everyone starts doing is this person black? Is this person Hispanic? Do we have enough racial diversity? Like, and I see people doing these mental calculations and I go, this is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. Then one of the professionals raises her hand and said, I'm Jewish. Does that count? And by the way, I'm Jewish. And so she raises her hand and says, I'm Jewish. Does that count? And then this person proceeds to say, I don't think it counts in this aspect. And I'm like, gosh, this just got so weird. So being a Jew doesn't count. And it wasn't just black. It had to be a racial minority. So they included Hispanics and racial minorities. But then there's a woman next to me who I knew was Hispanic, but was whiter than me. And I'm like, I wonder if she's counting her or not. But I'm not going to volunteer the fact that she's Hispanic. And because she's Hispanic with light skin, does that count as white? I could, the reason why I'm telling you this example, and by the way, we didn't have the meeting. I'm telling you this because by the way, and then later, one of the professional side of the people come in, and she happens to be a black woman, and it was almost a sigh of relief, like, oh, good, can we have the meeting? It got so
I would have been mad about that.
I took care of it, and it was remedied. I brought it to people's attention, and it was remedied effectively. But at the moment, I thought there was no better illustration of how ridiculous it has become of people. And look, I don't think this lady had malintent. I don't think she was doing that because
I know.
I think she was like, I'm told there has to be diversity. And in her efforts to pursue what she was told she had to do,
she probably set aside the business at hand.
Yeah. And it was discriminatory as all get out because now you have people like checking their own scale of whiteness. It was insane, but please go ahead.
I can't with that. Like, that gets on my nerves because seriously, I know somebody who does medical studies.
Yeah.
Okay. And they were doing a medical study on blue eyes on a problem that only occurs in people with blue eyes. But they couldn't get funding because they didn't have enough black people in the study. That's where we're at.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, so it's a crazy way to conduct equality. Yeah. But or even equity, it still seems ridiculous. But just like everything else, equity used to be one of those things, those words that we used to describe being a stakeholder in something, to having something, and now the language has been manipulated. I call it parallel language messaging. They're using all of our words, but weird definitions, and they use all English. They use the English language and redefine it, rebrand it. Use gaslighting and manipulative tactics. All of the logical fallacies now are perfectly acceptable to use in society when debating and when trying to prove something. So all of those things are they just go against what we have been using in Western society for decades, for millennia, even as normal, and as a way to conduct public discourse. And I think that is a tragedy. I mean, what's so the race thing, and you know what? Sure, I've been discriminated against plenty of times. There's been, there is racism all over the place, and we still see it everywhere. And it doesn't matter what race you are, it happens. But that's no reason to further divide people by putting them in a box and labeling them as as one thing or another. This is one of the reasons why I don't even like to go there with it. Most of what I talk about and most of what I do is to try to help parents navigate how we have to live in this new technological age. And filing that lawsuit was certainly for my family, for my son, but I also wanted to give parents a recourse. And since I filed that lawsuit, since me and my son William filed that lawsuit, there have been more than 24 law firms to either form or redirect their attention and resources to discrimination, to indoctrination in the education setting. When we first started, there weren't any public interest firms to help us. There were only a few that were even working on something like this, but they were all at the college level. It wasn't happening in the K through 12 education setting, because people had got it in their heads that there was no possible way to even sue your schools based on the curriculum. And since we filed that lawsuit, that has changed dramatically. And so I say to parents, fight back, fight for your rights.
Now, talk to me a little bit about SEL, because you talk about CRE and SEL. I wasn't familiar with SEL. You explained it to me before we went on air. I was hoping you can explain a little bit to our audience what SEL is and how that's impacting our schools as well.
So social emotional learning it's a program that its intention was to teach children how coping mechanisms for school, how to manage their emotions during school, how to control themselves, and how to have empathy for others, to stop fighting and bullying and that sort of thing. But now we're looking at something wholly different. And CRT and SEL work in a cyclical motion to reinforce one another. So for example, the Black Lives Matter movement, which started out as something good, it started out as something that was supposed to be good, to bring awareness to police brutality, in poor communities. And that had been a problem. But then it turned into something wholly different, right? And it turned into every cop on the street is just dying and itching to kill a Black person, right? And dying and itching to murder Black people. It turned into something wholly different, but that wasn't the end. After that, it turned into Black trans lives matter, because the people who were running Black Lives Matter, they spent a great deal of time and energy and money into dissecting the nuclear family. And one of those initiatives was to insert gender ideology into the movement. And CRT and SEL work in a similar fashion. So they work in conjunction with one another in a cyclical trend, so that you go from CRT to SEL to transformative SEL, and you have all of these programs like CASTLE and stuff like that. Those kinds of third-party contracts that are in your schools basically put a counselor in your child's school that your child has to go to once a week or something like that, in order to learn how to have empathy, and learn other things too, like comprehensive sexual education. All of those things all wrapped up into this education that's not exactly education. It's teaching, it's indoctrinating children into maladaptive coping mechanisms and sexual behavior. And so one of the things that tipped me off to the seriousness of this was what happened to my own daughter. When I realized that this was going on, and in the beginning, I thought it was good. We all did. We thought that having a therapist come into the school was good, because all of our kids were coming off of the lockdown situation. They were all isolated and having a hard time adjusting. Excuse me. And one of my daughter's friends had been hospitalized for self-harm. So all of the parents at the school, we were all excited about having someone come in to talk to our children about this. But, with the SEL program, I have realized a couple of things, right? That parents are woefully out of touch with what is going on with their children's schools, and woefully out of touch with what is going on with their children in general, myself included. I did not realize the disconnect that was going on with me and my daughter until all of this started happening. Through my activism, I have really understood what the results have been throughout the country.
And how does your organization, because you mentioned earlier you provide support for parents, how does your organization help parents deal with CRT and SEL, and what sort of resources can you provide for them?
Well, with CRT and SEL, I mean, I provide legal referrals for them. Most of the time, that's what is necessary, is a legal referral. There's all kinds. We also provide referrals for whatever advocacy or activism that's going on in their state. So if they're in one state and there's a particular group that's more active in that state for what they need, then we'll refer them to that group. But I mean, and that's just with the education. But what Affirming Reality Connected really does is to provide services for the community of people who are being affected by gender ideology. And that more specifically is the fallout from what they experience as a result of gender ideology being forced upon their families. Right. So in the instance of the Kolstad family in Montana, a friend of the family heard me in a space. Spaces have been very good for connecting people. And they heard me in a space talking about this new project that I started working on. And they reached out to me and said, "Can you help this family?" I was so unbelievably blown away by what was going on with the Kolstads. The Kolstads live in Montana. It's a red state. They have a red governor, a Republican governor. And when they refuse to capitulate to their child's gender decision, the state activated against them, and they were essentially stripped of their parental rights, and their daughter was taken out of their home and sent to Canada to be with her birth mother. She had been living with her father and her stepmother in Montana the majority of her life, and she was taken away from her family in an instant and sent to to another country to be with a parent that she hardly knows. All of this because the Kolstad said, no, we don't believe in that. We don't believe in that. And that was wrong. They had a gag order placed on them by a judge so that they weren't allowed to talk about it. And 5 months went by before they decided, you know what, we have to do something. They've terminated our parental rights. We have to do something. And when I talked to Crystal Kolstad, I was mad. I was furious at this. And so I sent all of the information to my team at Affirming Reality Connected, and they got to work. Maddie Watkins took point on the case, and she was able to secure the Kolstad's 3 lawyers, $25,000, and exposure through over 100 media outlets. The Kolstads did lose their daughter, but they have since been able to, the gag order was removed, and they are no longer in jeopardy of facing charges against them because of that gag order. They left Montana, and they can return to Montana without the threat of arrest because the lawyers that Affirming Reality Connected was able to secure for them.
Wow. So if people want to get in touch with you, if they're in similar situations, it's affirmingreality.com.
Affirmingreality.com if their children are identifying as something other than their natal sex. That's the coaching service that I provide to help people parent their children into desistance from social transitioning, just like I did for my daughter. But if you need other help as it pertains to gender ideology, then you can go to affirmrealconnect.com. Our website will be up very, very soon. And if you want to help that process along, you can go to GiveSendGo and search up Affirming Reality and donate, because we're up against a mega giant as far as funding goes. We're up against billions and billions and billions of dollars. And so it is difficult, and we're just a few parents and a few Americans trying to make things better for the people of America.
Gabrielle Clark, thank you so much for coming on David Pollack Show. Thank you for the great conversation, the great information. I hope everybody goes and checks out everything you're doing and helps you as much as they can, because you're doing really important work. And, we'll continue to support you here at David Pollack Show as well.
Thank you so much for having me, Dave.
Thank you so much, Gabrielle. We'll talk real soon, probably on X.
Right.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, guys. I'm out of time. That interview went so well, I just extended it, and I'm going to have to talk to you guys next week. We only have an hour every week, 58 minutes and 30 seconds, actually, for radio time. So make sure you check us out next week, same time, same place, 7 p.m. on Monday nights. We'll keep bringing you exciting information next week. Look, Trump is about this close from security nomination. We talked about it earlier, so stay tuned. And, everything it's what an interesting time to be alive. I mean, it's terrifying at times, interesting at times, but just make sure you stay tuned here to the David Pollack Show. And don't forget to go visit us at the DCPatriot.com, where you can find all of the latest news, articles, and information, links to our shows, and everything you would need to be informed. And we appreciate the audience so much here. And thanks for watching again.